right, so tell us a little bit about your role at CPPS and then maybe some of your background, and then we'll jump right into it.
Okay. Yeah, I honestly, I don't really care to talk about myself, but I understand that it adds some context, so it makes it a little bit more entertaining. My story is somewhat interesting, I think, or I'm told anyway. So I'm the vice president at CPPS, which is a Center for Personal Protection and Safety. It's a consulting and training company for violence prevention and high-risk travel. So man, how did I find myself there? Was originally from Iowa before I ended up finally in Spokane. I'll bring Iowa back around into a story at some point. Anybody ever been? You're missing out.
I've been to Iowa City, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, not a lot of people from Iowa, but joined the military pretty much right out of high school, and from there I did 22 years of the military, got to do a lot of cool stuff. Right in joining, I did long-range surveillance. I was a scout sniper in the military, airborne ranger, sapper, all the things you could do in the military. Part of a joint task force doing drug interdiction on the southern border for a little while in my younger years, and then I was a drill sergeant. It was a lot of instructor time throughout the military. It's what you end up doing in the military, right? Is with many jobs, I guess, is that as soon as you learn something on day one, on day two you're teaching it. So that's how it works. So did 22 years of military, did a lot of time overseas, a lot of places, doing things, building. This will tie into the story of how I ended up at CPPS, but like building base defense plans, gathering intelligence packets for all that stuff. Now, how does that relate to where I'm at now? Once I retired, I went to work at the SEER School. I'm sure everybody's familiar with that, living in Spokane. If you're not, it's the Survive, Escape, Resist, Evade school out there. So what I would do out there is I would teach, because of my time in the military, being a sniper, we'd find ourselves in enemy territory quite often. So a lot of the training that I'd received in the military, not only security type stuff, but a lot of the stuff that we had been trained on is what to do if you're behind enemy lines and you get captured. So what I would do for JPR 8 SEER School is the Joint Protection Recovery is, sorry if I start using too many acronyms, what to do if you get captured. Like how to resist giving up government secrets if you get captured, interrogated. So that's what I did out there, which led to like hostage survival stuff, which has now led me to, strangely enough, I was out there for about 4.5 years, CPPS, because we're a consulting company that wants to prevent violence in the workplace. Mm-hmm. And if people are traveling for work and they're somewhere that's dangerous, well, that's workplace violence. So I came to the business with the intent of teaching how to survive, if you're taken, detained by a foreign government, or if you're taken hostage by, a cartel or a terrorist organization. So we teach, Fortune 500 companies, have executive protection teams. So that's what I do now is I'm running the company with a partner of mine, a business partner of mine, and she's more of the operations side and more of the business development side. It works out, but it's made for an interesting thing. So I worked out there for a few years, and now I've been at CPPS for almost about a little over 3 years now, and been a partner and a part owner in the company for about a year. So, yeah.
Excellent. Thank you.
And I am Spokane because my wife's from Washington.
Nice. There's so many stories I want to tell about that, but we're here to talk about leadership as influence, so maybe we'll get back to some of that.
Yep.
But you said you gave a model for this. So Korey wanted to talk about leadership and how leadership is influence, and I'm going to do the same thing and cough right into the thing. Excuse me. And you talked about behavioral change stairway model. So let's talk about that first as a way to set the tone for leadership is influence, and then we'll just make our way from there.
Yeah, so actually what I'll start with is I talk in front of people quite often. So if I'm talking loud because you're all the way out there, if I'm talking to you, I'm not sure, I'll just gravitate towards whatever. So if it sounds like I'm lecturing, it's because that's my default. So I apologize. Leadership is influence. So the behavioral change stairway model, by all means, I did not create that. That was created by the FBI when it comes to hostage negotiation. It's pretty interesting because it's realistically, and it applies to leadership. And here's how I'm going to tie this together. Everything is influence, right? Leadership is influence. It's how do I get this particular person to do what it is that I need them to do? How do I get this particular person to do what it is that I need our business for the benefit of our business? It's not manipulation, right? Manipulation's if it's overwhelmingly to my favor as compared to just leadership and influence. Well, what's best for the business and how can I get them to do that? And that's really what the Behavioral Change Stairway Model is. So one of the people that helped develop that for the FBI's hostage negotiation team is a gentleman by the name of Chris Voss. Have you heard of him? Oh, yeah. Chris Voss wrote a book called Never Split the Difference. Here's how I'm tying this back to Iowa. He's originally from Iowa.
Nice.
Yeah, right?
Good work.
So he is from Iowa. So he's the other guy from Iowa, from Mount Pleasant, Iowa. So he joined the FBI and he did some time as part of a joint terrorism task force. And then he did about 20 some years as a hostage negotiator for the FBI. So then they helped develop this system, which we actually use quite a bit as framework at CPPS and what we do. It's Behavioral Change Stairway Model. How do I influence this person to do what I need them to do? So just to quickly kind of go through the steps, like the first one is active listening. It seems like a no-brainer, but so often we don't do it. Active listening, it's like, no kidding, like what does this person have to say? I'm actually going to listen to their story and find out what it is that makes them tick, what it is that they want, what problems are they having, what emotions are they feeling, but actually listening to their story. I've been referenced in a book as telling somebody, it was quite the story actually, but to just shut up and listen. And what I meant by that was just observe your surroundings and find out what's going on around you. And really like only talk if it's to gain more information from them. So you can put that in perspective of a hostage negotiator if he's trying to negotiate a safe situation or a safe resolve, right? It's learn as much as you possibly can about the other person. This applies in leadership, it applies in your marriage, it applies in absolutely everything that you do. Even my 14, 12-year-old, right? It's different, but it's the same. And then after that after active listening is empathy. Like actually have some empathy to their situation. What I definitely realize is that as we all know, can I curse on this? Because it's going to come out.
You can do whatever you want, my guy.
It's going to come out. It's like people are going through some shit that we don't know about, right? Everybody's going through something.
We are all bringing so much into this room right now. It's kind of bananas that we can enjoy each other's company.
We all have baggage, right? So it's like understanding, like having some empathy to people's situations as they're actively telling you their story. Like they're going through some stuff. Listen to them. Like there might be that particular day that they're going through right in that moment might be the most significant day they've ever had in their life. So being able to understand that so that you can relate to what it is that they need and what they want. Because after that whole process, what is established in that process is rapport, which is the next step in the Behavioral Change Stairway Model, is build rapport. You're doing that through active listening, having empathy to the situation, and you can build that rapport. And it's a long process. You know, we think about like a hostage negotiation, that process might be an hour, it might be days. As we look at it in leadership, that might be a 5-minute interaction or it might be a 5-year interaction. We're constantly trying to build that rapport because with rapport is the next step, and that's influence. Once I have established rapport with somebody or a hostage negotiator has established rapport with somebody, they can then influence the change in behavior, which is the last step, is change the behavior or influence the behavior that you want them to have. So in context of leadership, it's what we do every day. I'm not sure how much you want me to go on, but I will tell a short-ish story.
Do it.
And because I think it's a good example of a military example, but it applies quite often everywhere, right? So there was as I was a first sergeant, so I was first sergeant in the military at the time, in charge of, at the time, probably 180, 200 guys. And Colonel Bennett, I've actually changed his name in the book, so I'm just going to go with it, because this story's in the book if you want a copy. Colonel Bennett had come down, and he would just pop in on occasion just to check. So a colonel's in charge of, 5,000 people. And some of those people are on their way to combat. They're going to war. They're going to do some things. But he would always come down. He would check, like, how's it going down there? Hey, First Sergeant, how's it going? How's your people? What's the big issues that you're having? But quite often, he wouldn't even come to see me. Like, this guy's got in the military. He's been in the military for 25, look at 30 years. He's talking to generals on a daily basis, and who are, giving the president advice on what needs to happen in worldwide picture. He's a busy man. He's got things going on, important things. But yet he's going to come down. And there was a particular day he came down and just kind of showed up because it's what he did. And he's talking to this guy, this PFC Johnson was his real name, actually. PFC, the guy's been in the military for maybe a year and a half, brand new private. But he's over there talking to Johnson, and I just happened to come across the colonel and they're talking to him. And he's like asking Johnson simple stuff. Like, hey, buddy, how's it going? How you doing? How's it going? What's going on in your life? And he's like, oh, my wife's getting ready to deploy here in a couple weeks. So that's a pretty big stress. She's going to be gone for a year. And then Colonel Bennett, just having a genuine conversation, actively listening and having empathy for his situation. And he had said to Johnson, he's like, hey, let's make sure First Sergeant get you plenty of time off for the next couple of weeks so you can hang out with your wife before she's gone for a year. And like, oh, that's good. Of course I'd do that. But then as we're walking away, I'm walking out with the colonel, the company commander, their captain there with me, and we're walking out. And the colonel pulls out this notebook. It's about this big. It's a green Army notebook. It says memo on the front of it. And he writes it down. And I'm thinking like he's writing some stuff down. At the time, I'm thinking like, man, this guy could be writing down anything. Like, hey, don't forget to tell the commanding general, of our, our current, physical standard status, like all these things that they could be telling generals. But I glanced at his notebook, and what he was actually writing down is, PFC Johnson, his wife's leaving for Afghanistan in 2 weeks. Check back with him. Like, man, this is cool. Like, this is super cool. Like, this guy wrote this down. And as we're walking out, like, he looks over at me. He's like, hey, First Sergeant, short pencil's better than a long memory. I'm like, so it gave a little bit different reference to that particular thing, but true to his name, like, because I did respect this guy quite a bit. A week later, he came back, and he checked in with Johnson. He came back, he's like, First Sergeant, where's Johnson at? And he came over, and he checked in with him, and he's like, Johnson, your wife make it off okay? He's like, yeah, it's great. She made it out of there. Everything's great. So we actually talked to him a little bit to make sure that his wife got out of there and make sure I gave him the time off that he needed off. So he did all this stuff. But this super important guy that's got super important things to do came down to spend 15 minutes with somebody that had been in the military for just over a year. And then he looked at me and he's like, hey, as we're leaving again, he's like, hey, this will be the most important thing I do today. I think like, wow, that's pretty impressive. And to the point I even make in the book is he built rapport. He had empathy for his situation. And because of that, like realistically, for me to see that, for me to see him do that, like I would follow that guy anywhere. I really would, because I know that he cares about the people that he's working with and the people that he's leading. And it was just a great example of leadership. He really did. He looked at me, he's like, this will be the most important thing I do today.
What's wild about this story to me is, one, we could spend the rest of our time just walking through how much impact as a leader this one action had. I mean, you think about that private's not keeping that to himself. Mm-hmm. He's telling everybody around him, and now they all believe how much this colonel cares for you. It impacts you. It impacts, all the leadership structure between you and the colonel. It's kind of insane how effective that one act was.
Right, just as simple as, I'm going to make the effort to write this down and come back to this guy. Obviously, like Johnson's going to follow this guy anywhere. Mm-hmm. We have a phrase in the military. It's like, I would follow that guy to hell with a spoon if that's all he told me I needed. And I'll tell you what, Bennett, like he was that guy. And I would to this day. He's I guess we're on camera, but he very recently left the military and he left a 4-star. So
wow,
yeah,
that's crazy. Mm-hmm. So I want to double back to this stairway model because the first two steps, honestly, I mean, listening to you describe active listening, and in my mind I go, how many leaders have I had that didn't make it past the first step, right? That have no idea how to actually listen to their team, let alone after that, dig in with empathy, right? Actually hear what's being said. What I'm curious about is, if you know enough, can you walk me through how this actually worked in a hostage situation? Like, if you do this with the assailant and you get to the influence part, how do you act? You've used all these steps. How do you exercise that?
Yeah, well, for a hostage negotiation, and even any type of like de-escalation, trying to de-escalate a situation. That's a good example.
Right? Yeah.
Anytime you're trying to de-escalate a situation, like with my wife or anything, hostage negotiation, my wife, my 14-year-old, as you're actively listening, what you're looking for is not necessarily the problem. Mm. You're looking for the emotion attached to the problem. Right, because an emotional person's not logical. We all know this. An emotional person cannot think logically. So the more emotionally charged a person is, the less logical they're going to be. So what we need to do, if it's a hostage negotiation, even if you're the one being held captive, what we need to do is de-escalate a situation first. So I need to find the emotion attached to the situation, bring that emotion down to a state of calmness to where now a person can think logically. So from a hostage negotiation standpoint is, okay, let me address their emotion. They're frustrated, they're mad, they're upset. Whatever the situation they're emotionally charged about, like the story's irrelevant at this point until we can get to the logic of thought. So now we're going to address the emotion. It seems as though, Josh, you're extremely upset.
I am extremely upset.
And we could do this in a non-patronizing way, but just to give an example is, so I'm addressing his emotion, I'm trying to floor the emotion. Voss does a great job at this if you ever see some of his videos.
He did a mastermind, right? You could do his mastermind series. Yeah, I knew that name.
It was a master class.
Master class, there you go, yeah.
And it's really good, and even to the point where in his hostage negotiation, one thing he'll say is, he'll address an emotion up front to ground it, is you're going to be extremely upset about the news I'm about to give you.
Yes.
And then there's a natural pause. And from that natural pause, they have time to process and prepare themselves for the news that they're about to receive. So when they do receive the news, it's either as bad as they thought, which they're prepared for, or it's not as bad as they thought, and it's actually a relief. So it's like some simple techniques like that as how to address emotion. Then we ground the emotion. Now let's talk logically how we can get through this. If you're holding some people hostage, I'm going to get through your emotion. I'm going to tone down the conversation. All right, now let's think of a logical way out of this.
That's it. Okay, so that's what I was looking for is where do you go? The answer is, at least in this scenario, look for a logical way out. So you help them, work with reason on what are the outcomes of this scenario.
Right. And to put it into everyday context, it's a discussion that you're having with your spouse. It's a discussion that you're having with a business partner. It's a discussion that you're having with a subordinate. They come to you upset. They come to you fired up because they're not getting the time that they need. They're coming to you upset because whatever the reason is, like we have to first address that emotion because the logical there might not even be what it is you think it is. If they're not getting the time that they need, maybe the problem's not work. Maybe the problem is home. Maybe they're going through, remember it's the empathy part. It's maybe they're going through something at their house that we don't even know about. But unless we have good, candid conversations and collect some empathy and some information, we're never going to know that to be able to fix their problem. They're coming in charged. They're coming in heightened.
Well, and so to go back to what you said, how Chris Voss talks about, setting that expectation. You're not going to like what I have to say. There's a communication expert that I follow. I think it's Jefferson Fisher. I think I have that right. But he gives the same example as a leadership thing. Like if you have to have a hard conversation about someone's behavior in the workplace or even terminate somebody, instead of sending them an email or a text saying, hey, we need to have a chat, which we all know sounds ominous. It's like if you get that from a spouse or a partner or somebody you're dating and they say, we need to talk, we know where this is going, right? But instead going, we need to have a hard conversation, allows them time to adjust to the bad news that they think they're going to receive, right? Or they know they're going to receive. Yeah, yep. I like that. Okay, so let's talk about...
There's a few other things we could talk about in there, like mirroring and paraphrasing and all that stuff too. It's great party tricks, but we can talk about that later.
Again, in the description for this, you said using the Behavioral Change Stairway Model as a way to deal with resistance to action. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about what does resistance to action look like? And we talk about it in a leadership perspective, like you have an employee, you need to do something and they're showing resistance. How do we use leadership as influence to get them where we need them to go?
A couple different things there. I'm going to come at this from a slightly different angle, and I'll come back to that.
Do it.
Generally, what I would say is you have to determine what someone's motivation is, right? What is their motivation? What is their, and I say motivation and or incentive, because they can kind of come hand in hand to a certain extent, right? Motivation, incentive, they're kind of coined together. So it's what I refer to is what I've called the motivation triangle. It's there's three things that come to that, and I'm going to caveat that here in a minute, but there's three things that come to motivation or incentive. It's money, mission, or culture. You have to have a balance of those things. You have to determine, to this point, what is their motivation? What is it that brings them to you? Make them want to work for you. Make them want to do business with you. Make them want to respond to you. Money, mission, culture. And everyone's a little bit different. Some people rely a lot more on culture. Some people are completely money driven. What I do find is that you have to have people tend to have at least two of them in order to give up another one. So if a culture is absolutely amazing, it's just an amazing place to work, you're amazing people to be with, like CPPS, people are willing to take a little bit less money. They really are. And if they're driven by the mission that you have that flexibility. Your military is a little bit different because the money's a fixed amount. You have no control over that whatsoever. So you better bring it with culture and you better bring it with mission.
Yeah.
But in the civilian sector, it's those three things. It's money, mission, culture. What's their motivation? Because if you can determine that, you can determine what possibly would influence them also. If they need to have a culture. So even to be self-employed is a culture in and of itself, right? To be a solopreneur is a culture in and of itself. And some people are willing to make sacrifices to be the solopreneur because it is that particular culture. Yeah, I'll make a little bit less money, but I love what I do and I love my work environment because it's me and this person. So figuring out what their motivation is. So the caveat that I'd say I bring up is a fourth category being ego. People can be driven by ego, but the point of that is if you have that person that's driven by ego, that's going to be driven by a title, that's not somebody you want working for you anyway. That's not somebody you want to be working with. So if you can, you don't work with that person. So if it's that fourth category being ego, avoid it. Cut your losses. But if it means you need to give them a title to influence them to do something, cut your losses.
It's really interesting to me that you talk about solopreneurs and the impact that culture has in that triangle, because it's exactly what motivated me for 13 years to run my own business. I know there's entrepreneurs here in the room, solopreneurs, smaller companies that are motivated by the same thing. And it's a really interesting take on what motivates us to do that. It's the freedom and flexibility of being your own boss that does drive a lot of people. And you're right. You won't probably make as much until you leverage employees or whatever and scale it, as we like to say in the business world. And before you do that, though, you have culture and you're in charge of that and your mission, right? Money doesn't seem to matter as much.
Correct.
Interesting. Okay.
Well, it does. I mean, it matters to everybody to a certain extent, right? Like if you pay somebody enough, they're probably going to do a job they don't want to do.
Yes.
They're willing to give up that culture and maybe even mission. Like if you pay them enough, they'll flex. I mean, but this is just not realistic.
Look
right?
at major CEOs of huge brands, right? And the things they have to sacrifice for that, $40 million a year paycheck.
Yep.
Sure. Okay, so you said a lot of things, and like I said, we could even just stick to that first story of the Colonel. But you said manipulation. So we were talking about leadership as influence, and you hear it. The concern, if I learn good leadership skills, is now I can manipulate.
Okay.
And you said manipulation occurs when I'm trying to get somebody to do something that's overwhelmingly in my favor. But the difference between influence and manipulation seems really thin. So how do we avoid that?
Let me clarify at least my thought process with it.
Sure.
Is that manipulation is a type of influence. It's a bad type of influence. Manipulation is if I want you to do what's most beneficial to me, I'm going to manipulate you. And generally speaking, I would do that by maybe pulling certain statistics, right? We think the media and stuff a little bit, right? They're trying to, or maybe I do. People are trying to manipulate people all the time. Advertising sometimes feels as though it's trying to manipulate you, yes? So they pull certain statistics, certain facts, certain frames of reference that's going to make you lean one particular way in order to agree with them or see their way or buy their product, as compared to let me present you all the facts so that you can make the most logical decision and how this is beneficial to the company or the organization or the mission. It might not necessarily be the most beneficial to you as an individual, and those are kind of hard decisions that we make, even if it's, like you're fired and here's why. I'm gonna give you why, to a point where it's like, okay, that actually, I understand from your perspective why that makes the most sense to the business. I have to let you go for that. It happens. So there is a little bit of a difference, right? And so it can feel like manipulation, but it necessarily isn't, if that makes sense. Makes sense in my head.
It does. All right, let's talk about that. So leadership is influence, and you just gave a really good example of we have to influence someone out the door or away from our company. And what are successful ways that we can do that? And leadership, one of the bummer parts of it is when we do have to let somebody go or terminate a position or let a client go. Like if you're a solopreneur, you might be a relationship that you don't want to manage anymore. It's overwhelming. What are the ways we could use this model or use some of the tips and tricks you've learned to create that soft landing?
Oh man, that's a huge topic. From a couple different perspectives, a majority of our clients that we deal with, right, on a day-to-day basis. So a majority of our clients, probably half of them are Fortune 500 companies. The other half are universities, hospitals, healthcare, utility companies for some strange reason. We have a lot of those. So it's a lot of big companies doing mass layoffs. So what I would say there is, it's going to come to scale here in a minute, is when we're giving advice to them on doing layoffs, a layoff, firing a person, or mass layoffs, it's always one, make sure you do your research. Make sure they're not going, if we're creating a soft landing, is make sure they're not going through something that you don't know they're going through, and then you're going to come in and say, you're fired. Like my wife's got cancer, we've been going through this, and my kid just wrecked his car, like all these things, and you're going to come in and do that. So business is business, but there's a certain amount of you need to be doing there. So don't set yourself up for failure from the beginning when it comes to laying people off or just terminating somebody. But realistically, I do believe that we're adults. We really are. And you just want to be told straight. Mm-hmm. And if you don't, then it's okay. Like, I'm going to give it to you straight. And if that's something that you can't deal with, I feel like I've done my research, it's not a hasty decision, then people are going to be okay with that. People understand that. And if they don't, honestly, to an extent, like, I don't care. Like, if you don't have the ability to understand why this is the most logical decision, then we're probably not meant to work together anyway. Whether you're a client or whether you're a coworker, you're part of the team. Like, if you don't get it, like, okay, then it probably is even more probable that we should part ways.
All right, so let's say as part of this, I'm leading, there's influence here. The objective in letting somebody go in a safe way, in a soft landing way, is to prevent recourse, right?
Correct.
So what if I do my research and I find out they are going through it? Their wife does have cancer. They do. What do I do then? Do I still lay them off? What do I do?
Yeah, so that's when you start getting into the HR world of what things can I do as an organization, what things can I do as an individual, as a company that would create a soft landing for them. So does it mean that you would continue to employ them for another month because they have to be going through something right now? Yeah, maybe. Maybe it means you lay them off and you give them another month of salary. Mm-hmm. Maybe you give them 2 months of salary. Maybe you do what you can to make sure that they continue their employee benefits. Maybe you need to look at HR and see what EAP programs are out there, employment assistance programs are out there, to help assist them through whatever it is that they're going to be going through. And you could
extend that benefit.
Yeah,
say you're going to get this for 6 months.
PFML, all the things. Just make sure that you're using all your resources to make it impact them less. You don't want to be that heartless person. It's like, you haven't really been doing your job. Well, one, if your kid's going through some stuff, or if you're going through some stuff, like, maybe that's the reason. I generally find that when people's performance decreases like that, it's more than just what we have going on here. There's generally speaking, there's something else going on. So you need to make sure that we're addressing that. But if you have to let them go, then do your research and make sure you're not setting them up for failure.
I have found, and maybe you've seen this too, that as you do your research and you realize they have stuff going on, before you're even considering letting them go, if you just have that conversation of how's it going, I have found sometimes they'll let themselves go. Mm-hmm. They'll realize, I'm not happy, I don't like it here, I'm happy to call it a day. And you're like, I didn't even bring that up, right? Have you seen that happen where you're just trying to do that and you're like, they kind of bring themselves to that conclusion?
I mean, yes. Even to the point where they wouldn't let themselves go until we brought up that conversation. They're like, oh yeah, I've actually been disengaged from this for about 6 months. I just didn't want to quit. Like, okay, well now you don't have to.
Oh man.
Yeah, I probably shouldn't talk about it too much. We've worked with organizations. There's a particular story where it was actually a manager and his boss. So the manager's boss had come in and had seen this person just seem completely disconnected, off, showing up to work late, just not knowing exactly what's going on. It's off. This is not normal for this person. But then when he addresses him, he's like, man, something just isn't quite right with this guy. So he addresses him and says, hey, you need to be on work on time. You need to do all these things. Like, be a better employee, right? starts showing up on time. He's doing the right things. A month later, it starts to trail off again. So his boss is like, okay, something's going on here. Something's going on in this guy's life that is really affecting him. And so instead of just firing him, he had, like, this is a true story. Like, he legitimately, like, he had a conversation with him. It's like, hey, are you okay? Like, what's going on? And no kidding, this guy's like, actually, it's not okay. I've actually, to be quite honest with you, I've had thoughts of shooting this place up and myself. And it's like, this is the world we work in, right? This is what we try to prevent. So when our clients call us, we're like, hey, we have this problem. These are the problems they're calling us with. So he ended up going to EAP, the Employee Assistance Program, called the authorities, did all the things. They got him help. He went to counseling. The employee just, he was gone. Like, he was inpatient counseling for a while. And eventually after, about, it was probably like 9 months or something. I'm going to mess the timeline up here. But, 9 months, 12 months later, they heard that he had gotten counseling. He was done. And they kind of reached out to him like, hey, are you coming back? What's going on here? It seems strange. I'm oversimplifying this for time. But he's like, actually, you know what? I'm doing great. I'm doing really good. I do realize that that's not the line of work for me. And that's not what I want to do anymore. I'm done. I've got something else. I'm going to find something else that's great. And even to the point where his supervisor's like, how about those guns that you were talking about buying? Did you buy them? He's like, yeah, I actually gave them back to the police. They kept them. I said, I don't want anything to do with that. I want to change my life. But it came down to a conversation like, what's going on with you?
Well, and it goes back to that step. It's active listening and then empathy, but it started with noticing a change in behavior, right? They, as a leader, they noticed something was off, which precipitated that conversation and listening to the point where he went back twice, right? I think that's really great. All right, through a few times throughout this, Korey, you've mentioned logic and reason as a way to lead and as leadership. I don't think I'm alone in saying that not everybody is blessed with those skills. So how, as a leader, do we practice those? Do we hone those? How do we work on that to make sure that's a part of the tool in this toolkit?
Yeah, I think it's a good question. It's a constant self-analysis to know where your weaknesses are, hire the right people and being able to hiring the right people, but also being able to check your ego, to allow those people to use their talents to do what it is that you might not be capable of doing. If our business is going to be successful, I need to have sales folks that are a lot better at sales than me, and I am okay, 100% okay, saying like, you know a lot more about sales than me. But if my ego can't do that, that would be extremely difficult. Marketing, same way, right? I know my limitations in marketing. As interesting as I find marketing, I'm limited in marketing. I can be. It's okay. So I think to the point I guess I'm trying to make is know your limitations, make sure you check your ego, and build a team that's going to be the things that you're not.
Yeah. So often as leaders, you recognize that you might have a gap, but because I'm an expert here, it must mean I'm also an expert here, or I'm smart and I'm well versed here. That should apply over here, and so often that doesn't work that way, and that's where ego comes in. I want you to talk a little bit more about ego. So I don't have like a question specifically, but you've mentioned it enough. We should address it. I
mean, ego's probably your biggest as a leader. I feel like even as a person, I really feel like your ego is probably your biggest hurdle for a majority of people. I mean, once you really start tuning into like what's egocentrical behavior, like you see it all the time, even in yourself. It's like, why did I say that? Did I really say that from a position where I feel like I need to be a little bit bigger than I am? Do I need to prove to these people sitting in front of me right now how big I am? Did I say that, as I'll reflect back, did I say that a majority of our clients are Fortune 500 companies? Did I say that to caress my own ego? I'm serious. Like, you start thinking about it. Like, okay, it's like, but it's good to have that awareness of what's my motivation.
Yeah.
Again, because it comes back to that triangle of money, mission, culture. Well, that fourth category being ego. Did I do this to caress my own ego so that I want to paint a picture of what I want you to think of me? Or did I do it out of genuine leadership, empathy, active listening, and caring because I want to influence? Am I influence you because I need my ego caressed? Or did I influence you because it's what's best for the business? So it's a constant assessment. And once you see it, you can't unsee it in yourself and in others. It's pretty amazing. But I've had leaders, like in the military, I've had leaders that have been, in the military for 30 plus years, and they still have an ego problem. They really do. And you'll see it. Or it gets worse, yeah.
Will just made accidentally a good point. If you have questions, I want to remind you, grab the mic. Lauren will make sure you get it. Korey's willing to take questions. As we were prepping for this, you said something that leaders in that model, active listening, empathy, build rapport, influence, that leaders have a tendency just to jump straight to influence. Why do you think that happens?
Because you're busy. Well, I'm serious. It really is. Like, we get so busy in our day-to-day lives that we don't have time to come by and say, what'd you do this weekend? And it needs to be a little bit more than what you do this weekend, right? It's the short pencil concept. It's better than a long memory. But it's like, man, if it's one thing that I struggle with, I mean, I wrote a book on leadership, and I even talk about how important it is in there, but I struggle with it to this day all the time. It's like, just taking that time to connect with folks and getting so wrapped up into what you have, because we're busy people. We get so wrapped up into what we are doing, what we have to do, that we're not connecting with the folks that actually help us get where we're going. And that's extremely important. Even to the point, like, to be quite candid, like one of the things that I'm really working on, that I need to work on, that I feel kind of creeps into my day-to-day sometimes, is just not letting my stress be the team stress, right? Because it's not. Like, you have to control the culture. You have to control the tone of an organization. If you can't control your own tone, like, man. So if you really wanted to step back and take what's the pre-step of the behavioral change stairway model, it's like, control your tone. Like, you can't de-escalate somebody else if you're going to come in escalated. How do I expect my team to remain calm and functioning if I'm going to come in and be stressed out about whatever I feel like being stressed out about that day? We've all got stuff, right? So, like, your tone, it reflects very, very directly on the people that you're trying to work with. Well, it could be a vendor. If you're going to come into a situation in escalated tone, like, it's just the way it works. But I mean, that's something I'm working on right now. Is I don't want my team to feel my stress.
I had that happen with a client early on. We had a meeting. He gave some, what I thought were clear instructions on what he wanted for the website, just some content updates. I go back for the week, I work on it, I'm super stoked. I come back our next meeting, and he flat out says to me, that's not what I wanted. And I lost my shit. I was like, this is not what you said. And I lost my cool. And again, it was ego. Why was I saying this? Was it about me? Did I get it wrong? Maybe I did. But I realized I had to pump the brakes, and it was after the meeting. I called him back. I was like, hey man, I got out of hand, and I apologize for that. Like, it really is. It's not letting your stress become your team stress, your client's stress, your vendor stress, right? So you're talking a lot about being intentional.
To a point right there is, and I'm going to shift gears a little bit, but you made a good point, because let's say you were correct. I assume you're correct by the way you said the statement, is like, even if you know you're correct, that's not the point.
Correct.
The point is, it's not about who's correct. It's about and to shift it back a little bit, it's not about being correct, it's about the emotion attached to the event. Address the emotion, then you can get to the logic.
Well, what's more important, me being right or the relationship that I need to maintain, right?
I try to tell my father-in-law that all the time. you know it, Jim.
Oh, that's so funny. All right, so being intentional, like I think that's a phrase that gets used a lot in the business world. It gets used a lot in leadership. In the end, it means just making, decisions with purpose. Again, how do you practice that when you have so much going on and you're busy and you have your own stuff as a leader that you're dealing with?
Oh man, it's another thing. It's a continuous thing that I work on. It's a continuous thing that I think I try to get the team to work on. I need to be better at is focus. Like, decide on what's the most critical thing that I need to be focused on right now, and do it 100%. Don't do it 80%, because it's just going to continue to come back. But what is the most important thing for me to focus on? What's the most important thing for my team to be focused on? Two things. One is, anytime that I guess what I have realized is that if I'm completely overwhelmed and I'm completely stressed and I feel like I'm drowning in stuff to do, what I generally realize is that I'm just not delegating enough. I'm trying to do everything myself, and I know that there's a team of people out there realistically that are probably better at it than I would. So I need to be able to decide what I need to delegate and decide what I need to take on myself. And that's more of like a day-to-day thing as compared to like a leadership theory, but in sense, it's the same, right? So I definitely realize if I'm feeling stressed and overwhelmed, I need to make sure that I'm delegating the right things and I take the right things on myself. That helps give me clarity in the decisions that I do have to make. But it's being able to step back and even realize that you're in that position.
You can take that example even outside of the workplace and think about you leadership in your home or in your relationships with your partner, spouse, whatever, or with your kids. That delegating as parents, sometimes we feel like that's hard. And I know for us, we delegate dishes a lot, right? But if I didn't delegate dishes, now I'm doing dinner and then I'm doing dishes and there's no time to interact with my kids or help with homework or do the things I need to do, right?
Yeah,
so delegation
absolutely.
I'm glad you brought that up as a key skill.
I think that's an extremely good point, because even take that delegation to your kids to do dishes. Let's take that back to the business aspect of you're delegating to your kids to do dishes, one, to help you out, and two, so they learn how to do dishes and they learn responsibility,
That's
right?
So they learn the skill
So it's
themselves.
the same thing in the workplace is generally speaking, I'm not saying delegate your shit work because you don't want to do it. I'm saying delegate to the lowest level possible because it creates opportunity for them to learn how to do something and to have buy-in into the process, which is huge, right? Because they can't resist something that they built. They can't complain about how the dishes were done. They can't complain about dirty dishes if they're the ones that washed them. So build them into the process of how it's going to be done and delegate some of that stuff down. And it helps get it done, and it creates growing opportunity for your folks, and it gets buy-in.
We do that a lot with consequence. I don't know that this would work in the workplace, but we oftentimes, if our kid has a behavior issue, we'll just ask them, what do you think I should do about this? And then let them create the consequence. Now there's less room for them, to complain. All right, so go ahead.
I would say we do this in the military quite a bit, and that's how you develop young leaders. I'm going to delegate as much as I possibly can down to these guys and let them run with it. And the point I'm going to make is that it's like amazing, like what these 18-year-old, 19-year-old folks can come up with, 20-year-olds that have been in the Army for that year and a half, like Johnson earlier, is that, like, man, they can come up with some pretty cool stuff if you just give them the leverage to do that, which is a whole discussion about what your commander's intent is what we call it. Is like, what is my vision? And I guess I'm segueing into something else now, but if everybody within my organization, whether military or civilian, if they understand my vision for the company, they can go out and make independent decisions that support my vision. But if they don't have a clear understanding of what my vision is, then how are they going to go out there and make decisions, right? Because what I need to be able to do is send folks out on sales calls. I need to send folks out to meet with clients and know that they understand what it is that I'm looking for so they can help support that. We can't do that. They can't go out and operate independently if they don't know what it is that what I want of them or what we need as a company.
Yeah, I think making sure your team is in alignment with vision is super important. All right, we got a question. We're gonna pause and let Will get it.
Well, it's a question and not so much a question, but a comment. It's when you're talking about devolving decision-making authority down, that is one of the things that makes our military so much better than others in the world, is because everybody has an ability to make a decision and keep moving on all the way down to the lowest level, and it's that development of the subordinates that allows for that. And I think that's really good in a business organization too, because really if you employ a lot of people and if you're sitting at the top of that decision-making chain, the only thing really that should float up to you are like disaster problems, because otherwise it would have been taken care of at a lower level if you devolve your decision-making authority properly.
Yeah, I mean, you can't
good.
do the thinking for everybody on your team, right?
Yeah.
And you have to create that autonomy that allows them to move forward in the mission. They can't do that if they don't know where we're going.
So two things that comment is I've worked with a lot of foreign militaries, a lot of them. And being in the military for so long, I'm like, man, this is the largest organization in the world, the military. And there's so much red tape. It's a government agency. We know how government agencies, it's slow, it's clunky, it does not move. But then I worked with other countries' militaries, and man, they will tell you, like, the Americans, like, oh, they adapt. Like when they're in combat and something's going on, like they make decisions like that. Other militaries are very slow in their approval process. The red tape they have to go through, they don't nearly adapt as well as we do. And because of that, and that kind of comes down to commander's intent. You have two categories that we need to fall under there. Is with the commander's intent is you need to empower your folks. Empower them by making sure they understand your vision. And on the other side, you need to make sure that they're trained to do it. So if they have the training to do what it is that they need to do, whether civilian organization or military, if you give them the tools to do it and you give them the vision of what needs to be done, they can do it. So we need to make sure as leaders that we're doing that. I'm going to give you the tools, I'm going to teach you, and then I'm going to give you the flexibility to do it. Right? We're establishing that baseline of how it is that they should respond. And then the other point I was going to make too is like a lot of what I do is crisis management exercises for large corporations, hospitals, things like that. I will go in and it'll be, okay, here's an active shooter situation. I'm going to take that through step by step. It's a tabletop exercise, what we call it, right? So it really deals with like their crisis management team and their leadership team and what exactly they're going to do minute by minute, second by second. And communication's huge, right? Because that's what managing a crisis is. It's what information do I need? How do I verify its accuracy? Who else needs its information so they can make good decisions? That's crisis communication right there. Not my forte, but I feel like I've learned a little bit about it, from military and dealing with bombs at the front gate and dealing with tabletop exercises for corporations. But I guess a little bit of a tangent there.
No, it's all good. Okay, so probably our last question, might be our last question, but a lot of this comes up in leadership conversations, leadership books, whatever. The idea that even if I'm a leader of a team, I probably still have a boss, right? So, or maybe I don't lead a team yet, but I want to develop those skills. Leading from the bottom up, right? So how would we take this model, the Behavioral Change Stairway Model, and apply that if I'm not in a leadership position, but I want to create influence in my work?
Let's all right, so maybe a couple things here. I'm going to bounce around just a little bit, but I think it's important. Is leadership isn't necessarily because remember, leadership's influence.
Right.
So leadership might not even be the person with the title.
Right.
You might be on a team, but you might not. You might be in charge of a team, and I'm sure we've all experienced this. You might be in charge of a team, but the person that's in charge of the team isn't the person that has the most influence over the team. So who's really leading that team at that moment? Just because your title says manager or director or VP, it doesn't mean you're in charge. It's just your title. It's just a rank. Whoever has the influence is the leader. So as an influencer, what I would say is if you have trouble getting buy-in from your team and they're not necessarily, you find who is the influencer in your team. It might not necessarily be the supervisor. So find out who influences the culture of the team and connect with them. That's how you scale it, right? Because you can't touch everybody. You can't have conversation with every single person in your organization, which is a whole other conversation we have, is what we refer to as a leadership gap. But so understand that you might have the most influence over the team. Then it comes down to, realistically, it's like, if I want to lead this team, it's how can I prove my value? How can I take over his job? What task can I take from my boss that's going to make his life easier? That's kind of a hard pill to swallow sometimes because we feel like we should be the boss. Like, oh, I could do it better than them, right? But what we're doing is we're making sure that, one, we're checking the ego. I'm going to make my boss's life as easy as we possibly can, and I will work him out of a job. Because realistically, I feel like his job as a leader is to work himself out of a job. If I'm not mentoring somebody to take over for me, then I'm not leading. I'm not influencing them. I'm not getting them to do anything. If I'm holding them back so that they don't take over my job, it's the exact opposite. So how can you make your boss's life easier?
I love that idea of mentoring somebody to take over your job, and then your mentality is to elevate the person above you. I'm going to make their job so great. I'm going to make their life so easy that they get promoted to the next thing, and then I move up. I mean, that's kind of a weird, it goes against the grain in a lot of ways of like the culture that we see out there right now.
To an extent. And I think as we go through any particular job title or any job position or anything that, we go from when we first get the job or position, we're very reactive. We're trying to learn everything that we need to know in order to do it, right? So we're very reactive. We're reacting all the time to all these things until eventually you get enough experience where that shifts from reactive to proactive. Now I'm going to be able to anticipate, because I've experienced so much stuff, I'm going to be able to anticipate the problems that are going to come up. So then I become more proactive. And then I'm going to teach somebody else how to fill into that position so that I could continue to move up to the point of like everyone's got a boss. Like, okay, it's how do you shift from reactive to proactive? Education, experience, all the things that you need to do, but really it comes down to like time in the seat, right? Quite often it's just time in the seat, do what you got to do, learn as much as you possibly can so you become more proactive.
Yeah, awesome. Okay, that's it. That was a great segue. Nice way to end that. Okay, first off, round of applause for Korey for coming and joining us. As he's mentioned, he did write a book and he brought some copies of it. If you would like a copy, Angie has them right there. So grab one. I heard he signed them. So, maybe turn around and sell it on eBay. Who knows, right? Also, round of applause again for Slab Visuals and Fellow for making this event possible. They do so much for us and make it so smooth and amazing on my part.